A black waitress gave her inhaler to a man dying on the sidewalk, not knowing the stranger gasping for air was a Korean Mafia boss. The rain fell like bullets on the streets of Los Angeles, turning Normandy Avenue into a river of neon reflections and forgotten dreams. Zoe Mitchell pressed herself against the cracked brick wall of the 24-hour laundromat, her thin jacket doing nothing against the November cold that cut through to her bones. Her shift at Chen's Noodle House had ended 20 minutes ago, but the bus stop offered no shelter, so she ducked into the nearest doorway to wait out the worst of the downpour. Her hand moved unconsciously to the inhaler in her right pocket, a familiar weight she'd carried since childhood. Asthma, chronic, unpredictable. The kind that turns simple things like running for a bus or climbing stairs into calculated risks. The kind that had shaped her entire life around caution and preparation. She always carried two inhalers, one in her jacket, one in her purse. Better safe than suffocating, her mother always said. Through the rain, Zoe saw him, a man stumbling down the sidewalk like he was drunk. But something about the movement was wrong. Too jerky, too desperate. He wasn't drunk, he was dying. She'd seen that walk before, years ago when her younger brother Caleb had his first severe asthma attack at the playground. The panic, the grasping, the way the body fights for air that won't come. The man collapsed against a parked car not 15 feet from where she stood. Even through the rain and darkness, Zoe could see his chest heaving, could see the way his hand clawed at his throat, could see the terror in his face as his body betrayed him. People walked past him. Umbrellas bobbed by without stopping. Los Angeles in the rain, everyone in their own world, eyes down, problems invisible. Zoe's feet moved before her brain caught up. She was running through the rain, her own breath already tightening in her chest from the exertion in the cold. But she didn't care. She reached the man just as his legs gave out completely, sliding down the car door to the wet pavement. Up close, she could see he was young, maybe early 30s, Korean, with sharp features now twisted in panic. His lips were starting to turn blue. Hey, I've got you, Zoe said, dropping to her knees beside him. The water from the street soaked through her jeans immediately, cold and filthy, but she barely noticed. The man's eyes locked onto hers. Dark eyes, terrified, fighting. His mouth moved, but no sound came out except a horrible wheezing that Zoe knew too well. Asthma attack? He nodded frantically, hand still at his throat. His other hand was searching his pockets with increasing desperation, looking for an inhaler he didn't have. Zoe didn't hesitate. She pulled her own inhaler from her jacket pocket, her only one, because she'd forgotten to pick up her prescription refill this week, because money was tight in the pharmacy pay could wait another few days. Here, take this, she said, shaking the inhaler once and putting it to his lips. Breathe in when I press, okay? Slow and deep. She pressed the canister and watched him struggle to inhale. Once, twice, 3 times. His breathing was still labored, still terrifying, but some of the panic left his eyes. That's it. You're okay. Just breathe. Nice and slow. She stayed with him there on the wet pavement, rain pouring down on both of them, one hand on his shoulder to keep him steady, talking him through it the way she'd been talked through her own attacks 100 times. In through your nose if you can, out through your mouth. The medicine's working. Just give it time. You're going to be okay. Gradually, his breathing evened out. The blue tinge faded from his lips. The terror in his eyes transformed into something else. Confusion, maybe, or wonder. He looked at her like he couldn't quite believe she was real, like strangers didn't stop for dying men on Los Angeles streets, like black women in cheap jackets didn't give away their only medication to save Korean men in expensive suits. Because now that Zoe could see him properly, she realized his clothes were expensive. The kind of expensive she only saw in customers who came into Chen's by mistake and left quickly when they saw the plastic menus. His black suit was tailored, his shoes Italian leather now ruined by street water. Even his watch, she caught a glimpse as his sleeve pulled back, was the kind that cost more than her yearly rent. Better? Zoe asked softly. He nodded, still not speaking, chest still heaving but no longer fighting for every breath. Do you have someone I can call? Someone who can come get you? He shook his head, then seemed to reconsider, patting his pockets. His phone was gone, dropped somewhere or stolen. Zoe had seen enough street crime to know both were possible. Okay, here's what we're going to do, Zoe said, making the decision quickly. I'm going to call you an ambulance. You need to get checked out, make sure. He grabbed her wrist, the movement sudden enough to startle her. His grip was strong despite the attack he just suffered, and his eyes were intense, urgent. He shook his head violently. No ambulance? Sir, you just had a severe asthma attack. You need medical. He shook his head again, more insistent, and pointed at himself, then made a gesture Zoe didn't understand. Then he pulled out a wallet from his inside jacket pocket, waterlogged but intact, and showed her a medical alert card, written in both English and Korean. Park Min-jun, severe asthma, allergic to penicillin, sulfa drugs. Emergency contact, a number with too many digits blurred by water. Min-jun, Zoe read aloud, trying to pronounce it correctly. Is that your name? He nodded, and something in his expression softened at her attempt to say it right. Min-jun, you still need help. If you won't let me call an ambulance, at least let me get you somewhere dry, somewhere safe. He seemed at war with himself, suspicion and gratitude fighting behind his eyes. Then he nodded once, sharp and decisive. Zoe helped him to his feet, supporting more of his weight than she probably should given her own breathing issues. He was tall, at least 6 feet, and solid with muscle despite the lean frame. Together they stumbled down the street, rain still falling, her inhaler still clutched in his hand. There's a hotel 2 blocks from here, Zoe said, adjusting her grip on his waist as they walked. Nothing fancy, but it's clean and dry. Can you make it that far? Another nod. They moved slowly through the rain-slicked streets, past closed shops and flickering streetlights, past homeless encampments huddled under overpasses and late-night convenience stores with barred windows. The Hotel Angelino had seen better days, probably sometime in the 1970s, but it had a working lobby and a clerk who barely looked up from his phone as Zoe half-carried Min-jun through the door. I need a room, she said, fumbling for her purse with the hand that wasn't supporting a stranger. Just for tonight, something cheap. $80, the clerk said in a bored monotone. Cash only. Checkout's at 11. Zoe's heart sank. She had $47 in her wallet, tips from tonight's shift plus what was left of her paycheck after rent. Not enough. She started to say they'd figure something else out when Min-jun shifted, reaching into his own jacket. He pulled out a money clip, because of course he had a money clip, and peeled off what looked like $200 bills without even counting. Slid them across the counter to the clerk, who suddenly became much more attentive. Keep the change, Zoe said quickly, helping Min-jun toward the elevator. We appreciate the discretion. The room was exactly what $80 bought in this part of LA. Small, vaguely clean, with a bed that had seen better days and carpet that had seen worse ones, but it was dry and warm, and that was enough. Zoe helped Min-jun sit on the edge of the bed, then stepped back, suddenly aware of the intimacy of the situation. She was in a hotel room with a complete stranger, a man she'd just saved, yes, but still a stranger. You should rest, Zoe said, wrapping her arms around herself. Her wet clothes were making her shiver now, adrenaline fading into cold reality. And I should probably go. But Min-jun was looking at her with an intensity that made her pause. He stood, moving with more steadiness now, and crossed to the small desk where hotel stationery waited next to a phone book from 2015. He wrote something, then held it out to her, in precise, careful handwriting. Thank you for saving my life. I owe you everything. Please don't go yet. Zoe stared at the note, then at him. You can write but not speak? He nodded, then wrote again. Vocal cord damage. Childhood illness. I can make sounds but not words. Most people don't have patience for writing. You stopped when no one else would. Why? Why? Zoe repeated the question, surprised by it. Because you were dying. What kind of person sees someone dying and just walks past? Min-jun's expression shifted into something sad, almost bitter. He wrote, most people in this city, most people everywhere. You gave me your inhaler. That's not nothing. I have asthma too, Zoe explained, gesturing at the inhaler still in his hand. Since I was 8. I know how terrifying it is when you can't breathe, when your body just stops cooperating. I couldn't leave you like that. She paused, then added, You can keep that, by the way, the inhaler. I'll get another one tomorrow. Minjun looked at the inhaler, then at her, eyes widening in what might have been horror or disbelief. He wrote furiously, "This is your only one? You gave me your only inhaler?" When Zoe nodded, he continued writing. "What if you have an attack? What if you need it? Then I'll deal with it," Zoe said with a shrug she didn't quite feel. "I know the warning signs. I'll be careful, but you're the one who had the severe attack. You need it more than I do right now." She was trying to sound confident, but the truth was her chest already felt tight. Could be stress, could be the cold rain, could be the beginning of her own attack, but she pushed the worry down. She'd survived worse. Minjun stared at her for a long moment, something working behind his dark eyes that Zoe couldn't read. Then he pulled out his phone. Apparently he'd had it all along, just hadn't wanted to use it earlier, and typed something. Showed her the screen. "I'm calling you a car. You're soaked and it's late. Not safe for you to take the bus." "I can't afford," Zoe started, but he was already shaking his head, typing again. "I'm paying. Non-negotiable. You saved my life. The least I can do is make sure you get home safely." There was something commanding in his posture, despite his inability to speak. Something that suggested he was used to being obeyed. Zoe should have argued, should have insisted on her independence. But exhaustion was setting in, and the thought of waiting at a bus stop in wet clothes made her want to cry. "Okay," she said quietly. "Thank you." Minju nodded, then typed an address into his phone. Showed it to her. "Where do you live?" Zoe hesitated. Giving a stranger her address seemed dangerous. But then again, she just spent the last half hour in intimate proximity with this man, had given him her only medication, was standing in a hotel room with him. If he wanted to hurt her, he'd had plenty of opportunities. She told him her address, an apartment building in mid-city, nothing special but home, and watched him arrange the car. Then he wrote, "The car will be here in 5 minutes. Wait in the lobby. And Zoe..." He paused, seeming to search for words, even in writing. "Thank you. Most people would have walked past. You didn't. I won't forget that. I hope you feel better," Zoe said, suddenly awkward. "And maybe see a doctor tomorrow? Get your own inhaler?" He nodded, a slight smile touching his lips. Then he did something unexpected. He bowed. A formal, deep bow of respect and gratitude. Zoe didn't know how to respond, so she just nodded back and left. The black car that pulled up to the Hotel Angelino 5 minutes later was nicer than any vehicle Zoe had ever been in. Leather seats, tinted windows, a driver in a suit who opened her door and didn't comment on her wet, bedraggled appearance. The drive to her apartment took less than 15 minutes, and when she tried to tip the driver, he refused. "Already taken care of, miss. Have a good night." Zoe climbed the 3 flights to her apartment in a daze, her mind replaying the last hour. The man dying on the street, the inhaler she'd given away without thinking, the hotel room and the careful handwriting, and the bow. Park Min-jun, a stranger she'd saved and would probably never see again. She should feel good about it. She'd done something kind, something important. Instead, she felt hollow. Inside her tiny studio, she peeled off her wet clothes and stood under a hot shower until the water ran cold. Her chest felt tight, breathing slightly labored. She needed her inhaler, needed to refill her prescription tomorrow, which meant finding $60 she didn't have because she'd budgeted for next week, not tomorrow, because she'd given her only one to a stranger. Worth it, she told herself, climbing into bed. He was dying. It was worth it. But as she lay there trying to breathe slowly and evenly, fighting the tightness in her chest, a small voice whispered, "What if you have an attack tonight? What if you can't breathe and there's no one to save you?" She pushed the thought away and focused on the memory of Minjun's eyes, the way they'd changed from terror to gratitude, the way he'd looked at her like she was something precious. Sleep came fitfully, interrupted by dreams of drowning in air, in a stranger's bow, and dark eyes that saw too much. Morning came too early, announced by her phone alarm screaming at 6:30 a.m. Zoe silenced it with a groan, every muscle in her body protesting as she rolled out of bed. The double shift at Chen's Noodle House started at 7, and she couldn't afford to be late. Mr. Chen was understanding about a lot of things, but punctuality wasn't one of them. She dressed quickly, black pants, white shirt, comfortable shoes that had seen better days, and grabbed her bag, checked her wallet, $47, same as last night. She'd have to beg the pharmacy for a partial refill, promise to pay the rest next week, or ask her roommate Ivy for a loan, though Ivy was barely scraping by herself, working 2 jobs and taking night classes. The bus ride to Koreatown took 40 minutes, traffic already building up even though the sun was barely up. Zoe pressed her forehead against the window and watched Los Angeles wake up. Street vendors setting up carts, shopkeepers rolling up security gates, homeless people stirring in their cardboard shelters. The city of angels, her mother used to call it. More like the city of survival. Chen's Noodle House occupied a narrow storefront on Western Avenue, sandwiched between a Korean grocery and a cell phone repair shop. The neon sign flickered weakly even in daylight, and the smell of frying garlic and ginger hit Zoe as soon as she pushed through the door. Home, or as close to it as anywhere outside her apartment. "You're late," Mr. Chen called from the kitchen, not looking up from the wok he was stirring. He wasn't really angry. If he was, he'd be yelling in Mandarin. This was his version of a greeting. 3 minutes, Zoe called back, tying her apron. That's basically early for me. She heard his snort of amusement over the sizzle of cooking. The lunch crowd would start arriving in an hour, but the morning regulars were already trickling in. Construction workers grabbing coffee and bao before job sites opened, elderly Korean women getting their daily jjigae, students cramming in breakfast before class. Zoe fell into the familiar rhythm, taking orders, pouring coffee, delivering steaming bowls of noodles, clearing tables, repeating. Her chest still felt tight from last night, but she ignored it. She had work to do, money to make, bills to pay, no time for weakness. Around noon, the lunch rush hit like a tsunami. Every table full, people waiting by the door, orders coming faster than Zoe could write them down. She moved in a blur of efficiency, muscles remembering the choreography even when her mind fogged from exhaustion. Table 6 wants extra kimchi. Table 3 needs more water. Table 9 is still waiting on their jaffe. She was refilling coffee at table 4 when the door opened and the entire restaurant went quiet. Zoe didn't notice at first, too focused on not spilling hot coffee on Mr. Kim's lap. But then she felt it, the shift in atmosphere, the sudden tension. She looked up. Minjun stood in the doorway. He looked different in daylight, still expensive. A charcoal gray suit today that probably cost more than her car would if she owned one. But there was something else, something that made every person in the restaurant suddenly very interested in their noodles. He wasn't alone. 2 men flanked him, both Korean, both wearing dark suits and darker expressions, both scanning the room with eyes that saw everything and forgot nothing. Mr. Chen appeared from the kitchen, wiping his hands on his apron, face carefully neutral in a way that made Zoe's stomach twist. She'd never seen him look like that, controlled, almost afraid. "Mr. Park," Mr. Chen said, bowing slightly, "we weren't expecting you. I hope everything is satisfactory." Mr. Park? Zoe's mind raced. June was Mr. Park, and Mr. Chen knew him? But before she could process that, June's eyes found hers across the crowded restaurant. Recognition flared in his gaze, followed by something else. Relief, maybe, or surprise. He moved toward her through the tables, the crowd parting like water before a shark. Can I help you?" Zoe managed, heart pounding for reasons she didn't understand. Minjun pulled out his phone, typed, showed her the screen. "You work here?" "Yeah, for about 2 years now. Why?" He typed again. "This is my restaurant. I own Chen's Noodle House." The world tilted slightly. The stranger she'd saved last night wasn't just some wealthy businessman. He was her boss, or her boss's boss, or something. She looked around the restaurant with new eyes, seeing the way people watched them, the way Mr. Chen hovered nearby, the way Minjun's bodyguards, because that's clearly what they were, positioned themselves by the door. "You own this place?" Zoe asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Minjun nodded, then typed, "I own this and 17 other restaurants in Koreatown." Also, import-export businesses, real estate, other interests. He paused, then added, I've been looking for you since last night. I didn't know how to find you. Then I remembered the address you gave the driver, looked up which restaurants were nearby. This was my third stop. You were looking for me. Zoe's voice came out smaller than she intended. Why? Minjun's expression softened. He typed, because you saved my life and disappeared before I could properly thank you. Because you gave me your only inhaler without hesitation. Because I needed to make sure you were okay. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small bag from a pharmacy, handed it to Zoe. Inside were 3 inhalers, all the same medication as hers, plus a prescription slip with her name on it for unlimited refills. How did you... She started, but Minjun was already typing, I still had your inhaler. Called the pharmacy this morning with the prescription number. Had them transfer it and fill it. You should never be without medication you need. Zoe stared at the bag, throat tight with emotion that had nothing to do with asthma. This is too much. I can't accept... Minjun's hand on her wrist stopped her. Not grabbing, just touching. Gentle. He typed with his free hand. You gave me your last one when I was dying. This is nothing. Please accept it. Around them, the restaurant had returned to its noise and bustle, but Zoe felt like they were in a bubble. Just her and this intense stranger who owned her workplace and had tracked her down to give her medicine. Thank you, she said finally. Thank you. Minjun smiled then, a real smile that transformed his severe features into something almost gentle. He typed, Can we talk? After your shift, there's something I want to ask you. Every instinct Zoe had screamed caution. Rich men who owned multiple businesses and traveled with bodyguards didn't usually want to talk with struggling waitresses, but she remembered his terror last night, his gratitude, the careful bow. Whatever else he was, he'd been genuinely grateful. Human. I get off at 10, Zoe heard herself say. There's a coffee shop 2 blocks down that stays open late. Minjun nodded, typed. I'll be there. And Zoe, thank you for last night, for today, for stopping when everyone else walked past. Then he bowed again, that same formal gesture of respect, and left with his bodyguards trailing behind. The moment the door closed, Mr. Chen materialized at Zoe's elbow. You know Mr. Park? He asked in his accented English, eyes sharp with concern. I met him last night. He had an asthma attack. I helped him. Mr. Chen's expression shifted through several emotions too quickly for Zoe to track. Finally, be careful with that man. He is complicated. Complicated how? But Mr. Chen was already heading back to the kitchen, throwing over his shoulder. Just be careful. Men like that, they live in a different world than us. The warning made Zoe's stomach twist, but she pushed it aside. She had 6 hours of her shift left, and Table 9 was still waiting on their Jafar. The rest of her shift crawled by with agonizing slowness. Zoe's mind kept circling back to Minjun, the way he'd looked at her, the pharmacy bag burning a hole in her apron pocket, the fact that he owned the restaurant where she worked. Different world, Mr. Chen had said. But what did that mean? At 9:30, Ivy showed up to walk her home like she always did when Zoe worked late shifts. Her roommate and best friend since community college. Ivy was everything Zoe wasn't. Tall, outspoken, with natural hair she wore in an impressive crown of locks and zero tolerance for nonsense. Ready to bounce? Ivy asked, lounging against the counter. Actually, Zoe said slowly, untying her apron, I have to meet someone. For coffee. You don't have to wait. Ivy's eyebrows rose. Meet someone? Like a someone? Someone? Girl, please tell me you finally got a man because it's been tragic watching you marry this job. It's not like that. It's complicated. Zoe hesitated, then gave Ivy the abbreviated version. Asthma attack, inhaler, hotel room, expensive car, owner of Chen's, meeting for coffee. Ivy listened with increasing alarm, her expression shifting from curious to concerned to borderline furious. Let me get this straight, Ivy said when Zoe finished. You gave your only inhaler to some random dude, ended up in a hotel room with him, gave him your address, and now you're meeting him for coffee? Zoe, baby, that's not complicated. That's the beginning of a true crime documentary. He was dying, Ivy. What was I supposed to do? Let him suffocate? Yes, no, I don't know. Call an ambulance like a normal person. Ivy ran her hands over her locks, agitated. And he owns this place? Zoe, do you even know what that means? Mr. Chen is terrified of this man. I've seen how people act when Park comes around. That's not normal boss behavior. That's fear. The observation landed like a stone in Zoe's stomach. She had noticed the atmosphere shift when Min Jun entered, had seen Mr. Chen's careful neutrality, the way customers suddenly became very interested in their food. Maybe he's just intense, she offered weakly. Intense doesn't make grown men scared, Ivy countered. Dangerous does. Zoe, please, don't meet this man alone. At least let me come with you. Sit at a different table. Give you backup. Zoe wanted to argue, wanted to say Ivy was being paranoid, but her friend's concern was valid. She didn't really know Min Jun, didn't know what other interests meant, didn't know why grown men feared him. Okay, Zoe conceded. You can come, but sit somewhere I can see you, and if everything seems fine, you leave. Deal? Ivy hugged her hard. Deal, and I'm texting my cousin Rodney to be on standby, just in case Mr. Mysterious turns out to be Mr. Murderer. The coffee shop was one of those artisan places that had probably been a bank in a former life, all high ceilings and exposed brick. At 10:15 p.m., it was mostly empty except for a few students with laptops and a couple arguing quietly in the corner. Min Jun sat at a table by the window, back to the wall, a position Zoe noticed that let him see both doors and most of the room. He stood when he saw her, a gesture of old-fashioned courtesy that seemed at odds with the bodyguard stationed casually near the entrance. Tonight he'd lost the suit jacket, rolled up his shirt sleeves, and somehow looked both more relaxed and more dangerous. Zoe slid into the chair across from him, hyper-aware of Ivy settling 2 tables away with a clear line of sight. Hi, Zoe said, because someone had to start. Min Jun nodded, already pulling out his phone to type. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. Why wouldn't I? Because your boss probably told you to be careful. Because you're smart enough to be suspicious. Because men like me don't usually have innocent intentions when we ask to meet beautiful women for coffee. The word beautiful landed in Zoe's chest like a small explosion. She ignored it, focusing instead on the other part. Men like you, she repeated. What does that mean exactly? Min Jun studied her for a long moment, something calculating behind his dark eyes. Then he typed, It means I'm not just a businessman. It means the restaurants and real estate are legitimate fronts for less legitimate operations. It means people fear me for good reasons. Zoe's mouth went dry. You're a criminal. It wasn't a question. Min Jun didn't flinch from the word, just typed, yes. Though I prefer entrepreneur with flexible ethics. My family has run certain operations in Koreatown for 3 generations. I took over when my father died 5 years ago. Now I control most of the Korean organized crime in LA. This was the moment to leave, to thank him for the inhalers, wish him well, and walk away from whatever this was. Instead, Zoe heard herself ask, why are you telling me this? Because you deserve the truth. Because I want to offer you something, and you should know exactly who you're dealing with before you decide. Offer me what? Min Jun leaned forward, intensity radiating from him like heat. Typed, I need someone I can trust, someone who isn't afraid of me, who doesn't want anything from me, who sees me as human first. Last night, when you stopped to help me, you didn't know who I was, didn't know I was rich or powerful or dangerous. You just saw someone dying and helped. Do you know how rare that is in my world? Zoe shook her head, not trusting her voice. Min Jun continued typing. I'm surrounded by people who fear me or want to use me. Family members angling for power, business associates looking for advantages. Even my bodyguards. He gestured to the man by the door. They're loyal to position, not to me. But you gave me your only inhaler. That's not strategy or fear. That's humanity. I still don't understand what you want from me. I want to hire you as my personal assistant. You'd handle my schedule, manage certain communications, help me navigate situations where my inability to speak becomes a liability. The pay is $120,000 a year plus benefits, plus a car, plus an apartment in a better neighborhood if you want it. Zoe's brain short-circuited. $120,000. She currently made maybe $30,000 a year between her salary and tips at Chen's. This was impossible. That's insane, she said aloud. You don't even know if I'm qualified. I'm a waitress, not a... Min Jun slid a piece of paper across the table. Her resume, the one she'd submitted to Chen's 2 years ago. I know you have a degree in communications from community college, he typed. I know you're bilingual in English and Spanish. I know Mr. Chen says you're the most reliable employee he's ever had. I know you're smart, resourceful, and capable of staying calm in emergencies. He paused, then added, and I know you understand what it's like to communicate differently, to have the world not quite built for you. The last line hit differently. Zoe thought about her brother Caleb, about learning sign language as a kid because he'd been born without the ability to speak, about the frustration on his face when teachers and kids couldn't understand him, about becoming his voice in a world that didn't have patience for anything that slowed it down. You researched me, she said quietly. I research everyone who enters my orbit, Min Jun typed unapologetically. It's how I stay alive. But what I found made me more certain, not less, that you're the right person. For a job working for a crime boss. For a job working with me, there's a difference. He held her gaze. I won't lie and say there's no risk. Being associated with me makes you a target for my enemies. But you'd have protection, resources, and my word that I'll never ask you to do anything illegal or dangerous. Your word, Zoe repeated, from a man who just admitted he's a criminal. Something flashed across Min Jun's face. Amusement or respect, maybe both. He typed, fair point, but criminals have honor too. Sometimes more than legitimate businessmen. I keep my promises, Zoe, always. And I'm promising you safety, security, and a chance at a better life. In exchange, you give me your time, your skills, and your honesty. Why me? Really, you could hire anyone with better qualifications. Min Jun set down his phone and looked at her. Really looked, like he was trying to memorize every detail. Then he typed slowly, because when I was dying on that street, you didn't see a powerful man or a potential opportunity. You saw a human being who needed help. That's wisdom money can't buy, and fear can't fake. I need that around me. I need you. The confession was raw, vulnerable in a way that didn't match the crime boss persona. Zoe felt something shift in her chest, some wall beginning to crack. I need to think about it, she said finally. Min Jun nodded, typed, of course. Take as long as you need. But while you're thinking, he slid an envelope across the table. Open it when you get home. What is this? Insurance. Protection. Call it what you want. He stood, buttoned his cuffs with practiced precision. Thank you for meeting me, for hearing me out. And Zoe? He waited until she looked up. Whatever you decide, thank you for last night. You gave me something more valuable than my life. You gave me hope that good people still exist. Ivy materialized the moment Min Jun's car pulled away. Girl, what the entire hell was that? She threw herself into the chair Min Jun had vacated. First of all, he's fine. Like illegal levels of fine. Second, was that a job offer? And third, please tell me you're not actually considering working for a literal crime boss. I don't know what I'm considering, Zoe admitted, clutching the envelope. He was honest at least. Didn't try to hide what he is. Because honesty makes crime okay? Ivy's voice rose. Zoe, listen to yourself. This man runs organized crime in Koreatown. That's not flexible ethics. That's illegal. Dangerous. Probably violent. He saved my job, Zoe found herself saying. Mr. Chen told me last week that he might have to lay people off. Business has been slow. If Min Jun owns the restaurant, he's the reason I'm still employed. So that makes him a hero. He probably owns half the businesses on this street and extorts the other half. Zoe had no answer for that. Ivy was right. Logically, objectively right. But something about Min Jun didn't fit the criminal stereotype. The way he'd bowed in gratitude. The inhalers he'd gotten her. The vulnerability in his typed words. Just, let me think about it, okay? I haven't decided anything. Ivy sighed, deep and worried. Fine. Think. But Zoe, just promise me you'll be smart about this. Whatever's in that envelope, whatever he's offering, remember that men like him don't give without expecting something back. And usually what they want costs more than money. Back in her apartment, Zoe stared at the envelope for a full 10 minutes before opening it. Inside was a check for $10,000, a note in Min Jun's precise handwriting, for emergencies, for security, for peace of mind. No strings attached. Whether you take the job or not, this is yours. Consider it a thank you for my life. MJ $10,000. More money than Zoe had ever seen in one place. Enough to pay off her credit cards, cover 6 months of rent, finally fix her car that had been making concerning noises, get Caleb the specialized equipment he needed for his graphic design course. She picked up her phone to call Min Jun to tell him she couldn't accept this, but realized she didn't have his number. Instead, she texted Mr. Chen. Can you give me Park Min Jun's number? I need to talk to him about something. The response came immediately. Zoe, be very careful. Mr. Park is not a man to owe debts to, but he sent the number anyway. Zoe stared at it for another 5 minutes, then typed, I can't accept this money. It's too much. The response was almost instant. It's not too much. You saved my life. Money is meaningless compared to that. Please don't insult me by refusing. Zoe, I don't want to owe you anything. June, you don't. This isn't leverage. It's gratitude. Keep it. Use it. Or burn it if that makes you feel better. But Zoe, please understand, having money you need isn't a debt. It's justice. She read the last message 3 times. It's justice. Like her struggling was an injustice that money could correct. Like he saw her barely scraping by and considered it wrong in a way that demanded correction. It should have felt condescending, insulting even. Instead, it felt like being seen. Really, truly seen for the first time in years. Zoe, if I take the job, what would I actually be doing? Day to day. June, managing my schedule, taking calls and messages, accompanying me to meetings to help communicate when writing isn't practical, helping me navigate situations where my silence is a disadvantage. Think of it as being my voice in a world that doesn't understand silence. Zoe, and the illegal stuff, June, you'd know it happens. You'd be around it peripherally. But I'd never ask you to participate. I have people for that. I need you for the legitimate parts of my life, for being human in a world that's forgotten how. Zoe, I need a few days to think. Minjun, take all the time you need. The offer stands. And Zoe, sleep well. You're safe. I made sure of it. That last message should have been creepy. Instead, Zoe found herself checking her locks with less anxiety than usual, climbing into bed feeling safer than she had in months. She dreamed of dark eyes and careful handwriting, and a bow that spoke of respect she'd never quite earned before. 3 days later, Zoe walked into Chen's noodle house for what she thought might be her last shift. She'd made her decision lying awake at 3 a.m., Caleb's voice in her head reminding her that opportunities didn't knock twice for people like them, that sometimes you had to take risks to change your life, that being afraid of success was just another way of staying small. She found Mr. Chen in the kitchen, chopping vegetables with the precision of a surgeon. I need to talk to you, she said. He didn't look up. You're taking Mr. Park's offer. Not a question. How did you? Because I've watched you these 3 days, watched you thinking. You have that look, like someone seeing a door they didn't know existed. Are you angry? Zoe asked quietly. Mr. Chen finally met her eyes. Angry? No. Worried, yes. Sad to lose best waitress, yes. But angry? Zoe, you think I don't know what it's like to work 3 jobs and still never have enough? You think I don't remember being young and hungry and desperate for chance? He set down his knife. I came to America with nothing. Mr. Park's father gave me loan to start this place. I know what that family is, know what they do, but I also know they keep promises. So you think I should take it? I think you should be smart. Use resources he gives you. Learn everything you can. Save money, make connections. And always, always have exit plan. He returned to chopping. And Zoe, don't fall in love with him. Men like Park Min-jun, they don't love back same way. Too dangerous. Too broken. The warning settled in Zoe's chest like a stone. Fall in love with June? The thought hadn't even occurred to her. This was business, a job, a way out of poverty. Zoe texted Min-jun that night. I'll take the job. When do I start? The response came within seconds. Monday. I'll send a car for you at 8 a.m. Wear something professional but comfortable. We have a lot to discuss. Then a moment later, thank you, Zoe. You won't regret this. She hoped he was right. Monday morning arrived with the weight of transformation. Zoe stood in front of her closet, staring at clothes that suddenly seemed inadequate. Professional but comfortable. What did that even mean for a crime boss's assistant? She settled on black slacks and a burgundy blouse that Ivy had once said made her skin glow, pulled her natural hair into a neat bun, and applied minimal makeup. The car that arrived at 7:55 was the same one from the night of Min-jun's attack. Sleek, expensive, driver in a crisp suit. This time Zoe noticed details she'd missed before. Bulletproof windows, reinforced doors, the subtle bulge under the driver's jacket that suggested a weapon. She was entering a different world. Mr. Chen's words echoed, always have exit plan. Min-jun's office was in a high-rise in downtown LA, 20th floor with views that stretched to the ocean. The space was minimalist, glass and steel and expensive art that Zoe didn't recognize. But what caught her attention was the wall of photographs in the back corner. All of them featured Min-jun with various people. An older Korean man who must be his father, a beautiful woman who might be his mother, groups of serious-looking men in suits. Good morning. Zoe turned to find Min-jun emerging from an interior office, dressed in a navy suit that probably cost more than her rent. He smiled, genuinely smiled, when he saw her and typed into his phone. You came. I wasn't entirely sure you would. I keep my promises too, Zoe said. His smile widened. We're going to get along well. The first day was overwhelming. Min-jun walked her through his empire, the legitimate businesses, the less legitimate ones he never actually confirmed, but that she understood through context. She met his staff, his lawyer, his accountant, his head of security named Jin Woo, who looked at Zoe with open skepticism until Min-jun typed something in Korean that made Jin Woo's expression shift to grudging respect. Jin Woo will be your primary protection, Min-jun explained. He'll accompany you anywhere you go until my enemies understand you're off limits. You really think someone would hurt me just because I work for you? Min-jun's expression darkened. He typed, I know they would. In my world, leverage is currency. You're close to me now. That makes you valuable. That makes you a target. The reality of it hit Zoe like cold water. This wasn't just a better job with better pay. This was danger. Real, physical danger. Maybe I should, she started, but Min-jun cut her off by gently taking her hand. Typed with his free hand, I will never let anyone hurt you. That's not empty promise. That's blood oath. You're under my protection now. Anyone who touches you answers to me. And Zoe? He waited until she met his eyes. No one wants to answer to me. There was something fierce in his gaze, protective and possessive in equal measure. It should have frightened her. Instead, Zoe felt safe, safer than she'd felt in years. Okay, she said quietly. I trust you. Something shifted in Min-jun's expression, softened. He released her hand and typed, You shouldn't trust me this quickly. I'm still a dangerous man. Dangerous to your enemies, Zoe found herself saying. Not to me. How do you know? Because you bowed. That first night in the hotel room. You bowed to me like I was someone important, like I mattered. Dangerous men don't bow to waitresses. Min-jun stared at her for a long moment, then typed, My father taught me that power without respect is tyranny, that the measure of a man isn't who fears him, but who he honors. You saved my life when you had every reason not to. That deserves more than a bow. It deserves everything I can give you. The intensity of the statement made Zoe's breath catch. This wasn't just gratitude. This was something deeper, something that felt dangerous in an entirely different way. Before she could respond, Jin Woo appeared in the doorway, speaking rapid Korean. Min Jun's expression shifted instantly. All business, all sharp focus. He typed, "Problem at the restaurant on 6th. I need to handle it. Come with me. Time to see what your job really entails." The restaurant on 6th was one of Min Jun's properties, a higher-end place called Moonlight that catered to business professionals and wealthy families. When they arrived, Zoe immediately sensed the tension. Staff huddled in worried clusters. A man in a police uniform stood by the bar, notepad in hand, looking uncomfortable. Min Jun strode in with the confidence of ownership. Jin Woo at his shoulder, Zoe trailing behind, trying to look professional. The police officer, Detective Martinez according to his badge, straightened when he saw Min Jun. "Mr. Park, we need to discuss the incident from last night." Min Jun pulled out his phone to type, but the detective was already shaking his head. "I need verbal answers, Mr. Park. I can't take a typed statement." Frustration flashed across Min Jun's face, and Zoe saw the problem immediately. He couldn't speak, the detective wouldn't accept written communication, and the situation was deadlocked. "I can help," Zoe heard herself say. Both men turned to look at her. "I'm Mr. Park's assistant. I can translate his statements for the record." Detective Martinez looked skeptical. "And you are?" "Zoe Mitchell. I started today." She showed him her brand new company ID that Jinwoo had given her that morning. "Mr. Park will type his answers. I'll speak them aloud for your notes. That's standard accommodation under the ADA." The detective's skepticism didn't fade, but he couldn't argue with the law. "Fine, but I need clear, complete answers." Min Jun shot Zoe a look that might have been gratitude or surprise, then started typing. Zoe read aloud. "Mr. Park states that he was not present at the restaurant last night. He was at his downtown office until 11 p.m., then went directly home. His head of security can confirm." The questioning continued for 20 minutes. Min Jun typing, Zoe speaking. Detective Martinez growing increasingly frustrated as his questions yielded nothing useful. Finally, "Mr. Park, I have 3 witnesses who say they saw someone matching your description arguing with the victim before he was assaulted in the parking lot." Min Jun's jaw tightened. He typed rapidly and Zoe read, "Mr. Park notes that many Korean men in expensive suits frequent this area. He requests descriptions more specific than his general appearance. He also notes that without security footage or more concrete evidence, witness identification is unreliable at best." "Are you refusing to cooperate?" "Mr. Park is fully cooperating within his legal rights. He's answered all your questions honestly. If you have evidence linking him to a crime, present it. Otherwise, this conversation is over." The words came out of Zoe's mouth with more confidence than she felt, but Min Jun's slight nod told her she'd said exactly what he wanted. Detective Martinez closed his notebook with a snap. "This isn't over, Park. I know what you are. I know what you do. And one of these days, I'm going to prove it." Min Jun typed something and Zoe read, keeping her voice neutral. "Mr. Park looks forward to your continued investigation into legitimate business operations. He's always happy to cooperate with law enforcement." The sarcasm was evident even through her translation. After the detective left, Min Jun turned to Zoe with something like awe in his expression. Typed, "You were perfect, calm, professional, legally sound. Where did you learn to handle police interrogations?" "I didn't," Zoe admitted. My brother used to get hassled by cops all the time. Being mute made them suspicious. I learned to advocate for him. Learned the ADA. Learned what they could and couldn't demand. Guess it translates." "Your brother is mute?" "Since birth, congenital vocal cord issue. He communicates through sign language and text-to-speech. It's why I learned sign language when I was a kid." Something profound shifted in Min Jun's expression. He typed, "So you understand what it's like to be silenced. To have the world assume silence means stupidity or guilt. To need someone who'll speak for you without speaking over you." "Yeah," Zoe said softly. "I understand." Min Jun stepped closer, close enough that Zoe could smell his cologne. Something expensive and woodsy. He typed, "I chose right, hiring you. You're not just qualified, you're perfect, like you were made for this role." The intensity in his eyes made Zoe's heart race. "I'm just doing my job." "No, you're being my voice in a way no one else has ever managed. Do you know how rare that is? How valuable? His hand came up, hesitated, then gently touched her cheek. Thank you. Zoe should have stepped back, should have maintained professional boundaries. But something about the way he looked at her, grateful and vulnerable and intense, kept her frozen. You're welcome, she whispered. Jin Woo's pointed cough broke the moment. He said something in Korean that made Min Jun's hand drop and his expression shift back to business. Min Jun typed to Zoe, "We need to check on the staff. Make sure they understand what to say if police return. I'll need you to communicate my instructions." The rest of the day was a crash course in Min Jun's world. Zoe met his restaurant managers, his distributors, people who spoke in careful euphemisms about inventory and protection services. She learned to translate Min Jun's typed instructions into verbal commands that staff responded to with immediate obedience. And she began to understand the scope of his empire, vast, intricate, straddling the line between legal and illegal with practiced precision. By the time they returned to the downtown office at 7 p.m., Zoe was exhausted. But Min Jun wasn't done. He typed, "Dinner. We need to debrief your first day. There's a private dining room upstairs, no pressure to eat, but we should talk." I thought the car would take me home. It will, after we talk. Please, Zoe, just an hour. The private dining room turned out to be attached to Min Jun's personal apartment, a penthouse that made his office look modest. Floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a restaurant. The dining table was already set for two, food laid out from what looked like a very expensive catering service. "You planned this," Zoe said, taking in the setup. Min Jun had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. Typed, "I hoped you'd stay. Wanted to celebrate your first day, and to thank you properly for how you handled the detective. With expensive food?" "With conversation. The food is just an excuse." He pulled out her chair, old-fashioned courtesy that made Zoe's heart flutter. They ate bulgogi, kimchi, perfectly steamed rice. Banchan spread across the table, while Min Jun typed questions and Zoe answered. He wanted to know everything: her childhood in South Central, her parents who worked constantly, her brother Caleb and the challenges of growing up mute in a hearing world, her dreams of being a teacher that died when money ran out. "Why teaching?" Min Jun asked. "Because I know what it's like to be overlooked," Zoe explained. "To have people assume you can't because of something you are, rather than something you've done. I wanted to be the teacher who saw potential in kids everyone else gave up on. Wanted to make a difference. You still can. In this role." Min Jun leaned forward, intent. "My community center project. It needs someone who understands education, who gets what it means to be marginalized. I want to offer classes for immigrant kids, job training, ESL. But I need someone to run it who has vision. Someone like you. I'm your assistant, not a program director. You're whatever I need you to be. And right now, I need you to build something that honors my father's memory while actually helping people." He typed rapidly, passion evident even through text. "My father came here with nothing, built an empire through crime because legitimate opportunities didn't exist for him. But he always said if he could do it again, he'd build something that helped others rise without needing to break laws. I want to do that, and I want your help." Zoe stared at him, this complicated man who ran criminal operations while dreaming of community centers. "Why me? Really? You could hire actual program directors with experience. Because experience without heart is just bureaucracy. You have heart. You stopped for a dying stranger. You defended me to police. You understand what it means to be voiceless and need an advocate. That's worth more than any degree. You put a lot of faith in someone you barely know." Min Jun set down his phone and just looked at her. Really looked, with an intensity that made Zoe's breath catch. Then he typed, "I know you better than you think. I know you gave your last inhaler to a stranger. I know you work double shifts to send money to your parents. I know you visit your brother every Sunday and help him with his graphic design work. I know you're kind in a world that punishes kindness. That's not barely knowing someone. That's understanding who they are. You really did your research. I protect what's mine. And Zoe, whether you realize it yet or not, you're mine now. My employee, my responsibility, my He paused, seemed to reconsider, then finished. My priority. The possessive language should have alarmed her. Instead, it sent warmth flooding through Zoe's chest. Your priority, she repeated softly. Yes. Min. June stood, came around the table, offered his hand. Dance with me? There's no music. There doesn't need to be. And somehow that made perfect sense. Zoe took his hand and let him pull her close. Let him sway with her in the silence of his penthouse apartment. They moved without music, without words, just breath and heartbeat and the electricity of proximity. I'm falling for you, Min. June typed with one hand, his phone pressed between them where she could see it, his other hand warm on her waist. I know it's too soon. I know it's inappropriate. But I need you to know, because I don't lie. Not to you. Zoe's heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. June! You don't have to say anything. Just know, and know that I'll never pressure you. Never use my position against you. If you want this to be purely professional, I'll respect that. But Zoe, I had to tell you, had to be honest. She should have pulled away, should have insisted on boundaries. Instead, Zoe found herself rising on her toes, found her lips meeting his in a kiss that tasted like possibility and danger and something that might be love. Min-jun made a sound, actual vocal sound, rough and desperate, and pulled her closer, kiss deepening until Zoe forgot where she ended and he began. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, reality crashed back. This is a terrible idea, Zoe whispered. Min-jun typed. Probably the worst. You're my boss. I know. You're a criminal. I know that too. And I'm falling for you anyway. Min-jun's smile could have lit the city. He typed, good. Then we can be terrible together. The next 3 months were a fever dream of professional competence and personal complication. Publicly, Zoe was Min-jun's perfect assistant, managing his schedule, translating his communications, handling situations that required verbal negotiation. She ran interference with law enforcement, smooth-talked difficult business partners, and became indispensable to his operations. Privately, they were something else entirely. Stolen kisses in his office between meetings, late-night dinners in his penthouse that turned into mornings, conversations typed on phones and spoken aloud that revealed depths Zoe had never imagined. Min-jun was brilliant and broken, honorable and ruthless, capable of ordering violence while funding scholarships for immigrant children. You're a walking contradiction, Zoe told him one night, lying tangled in his sheets after making love that left her breathless. Min-jun typed, I'm a product of my world, born into violence, raised to lead, trying to build something better while maintaining what is. Is it hypocritical? Yes, but it's the only way I know to honor both my father's legacy and my own conscience. What if you could leave it all? Start over somewhere new? With you? The question came with such hope that Zoe's heart ached. Yeah, with me. Min-jun was quiet for a long time, fingers tracing patterns on her skin. Then, I'd want to. God, I'd want to. But Zoe, you don't just leave this life. It follows you, my enemies, my allies. Everyone who depends on the structure I maintain, they wouldn't just let me walk away. So what? We just keep living like this. You running your empire, me pretending I don't know the details, both of us waiting for the other shoe to drop? Is that so terrible? Having this? Having us? No, Zoe admitted, but it's not sustainable either. Eventually, something's going to force a choice. She was right. The choice came 2 weeks later in the form of federal agents at Min-jun's office door. Zoe was reviewing schedules when they burst in, badges high, weapons drawn, shouting commands that turned the world into chaos. She watched them put Min-jun in handcuffs, watched him try to explain with frantic typing that they ignored, watched them drag him toward the door. Wait! Zoe's voice cut through the chaos. What's he charged with? RICO violations, the lead agent said. Racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy. We've been building this case for 3 years. He has rights. He needs a lawyer. He can't speak. You can't interrogate him without proper accommodation. He can write. The agent dismissed her concern. And he will. in a federal holding cell. Ma'am, step back. This doesn't concern you. I'm his assistant, his translator. You can't just step back or you'll be arrested for obstruction. The threat was clear. Zoe stepped back, watched them take Min Jun, watched him look at her with eyes full of fear and fury and something that might have been goodbye. The moment they were gone, Zoe was calling Jin Woo. They took him. Federal agents, RICO charges. What do we do? We? Jin Woo's voice was cold. You're an employee, Miss Mitchell. This is family business now. Stay out of it. I'm not staying out of anything. He needs help. He needs you to be smart. If you get involved, you become a target. They'll investigate you, use you against him. Best thing you can do is distance yourself. Claim ignorance. I won't abandon him. Jin Woo sighed, deep and weary. Then you're a fool, but a loyal one. Meet me at the lawyer's office in an hour. We'll figure this out. The lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Rebecca Chen, was blunt about Min Jun's chances. The feds have wiretaps, financial records, witness testimony. They've been building this for years. Unless Min Jun cooperates, testifies against his associates, he's looking at 20 years minimum. He won't testify, Jin Woo said flatly. That would be signing his own death warrant. The families he'd betray would kill him in prison. Then we pray for a miracle, Rebecca said. Or a really bad prosecution. The arraignment is tomorrow morning. Federal courthouse downtown. They'll formally charge him, set bail, though with RICO, I doubt bail is happening. And here's the problem. Min Jun can't speak, can't defend himself verbally in court. Judge will demand competence evaluation. He's completely competent, Zoe interjected. He runs a multi-million-dollar operation, manages complex negotiations. I believe you, but proving it to a judge when he can't verbally respond to questions? That's a challenge. We'll need documentation, expert witnesses, possibly an interpreter. I can do it, Zoe said. Everyone turned to look at her. I can translate for him. In court. He types, I speak. It's what I've been doing for months. Rebecca shook her head. You're not a certified court interpreter. The judge won't accept. Then certify me. Fast track whatever process exists, or argue 80 accommodation. But Rebecca, you know as well as I do that Min Jun's silence will be used against him. He needs a voice. I can be that voice. Rebecca and Jin Woo exchanged glances. Finally, Rebecca said, It's irregular. The prosecution will object. But it might work. If we frame it as necessary accommodation under the ADA, emphasize that Min Jun's inability to speak doesn't indicate incompetence. She started typing rapidly on her laptop. I'll file emergency motions tonight. Argue that you've been his primary communication assistant for months, that you're familiar with his communication style, that denying him access to you violates his rights. This is a bad idea, Jin Woo said. If you do this, Miss Mitchell, you're making yourself part of the case. Prosecution will dig into your background, question your credibility, and if Min Jun is convicted, you could face charges as an accomplice. I don't care, Zoe said, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. He needs help. I'm not walking away. Rebecca studied her with calculating eyes. You love him. It wasn't a question. Zoe could have denied it, should have maintained professional distance. Instead, yes, I love him, and I'm not letting him face this alone. Jin Woo's expression softened slightly. Boss chose well. You're either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. The federal courthouse was a fortress of marble and security. Zoe passed through metal detectors, had her bag searched, was escorted to the courtroom by marshals who looked at her with suspicion. Inside, the gallery was packed. Journalists, Min Jun's associates, federal agents, curious onlookers. All eyes turned when Min Jun was led in, wearing an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs. His eyes found Zoe immediately. Something in his expression cracked, relief and regret and love so fierce it took her breath away. The marshal seated him at the defense table next to Rebecca, who immediately leaned in to whisper something. Min Jun shook his head, pulled out a phone the court had allowed him for communication, and typed. Showed it to Rebecca. She frowned, typed back. He typed again, more insistent. Rebecca stood. Your Honor, my client requests that his communication assistant, Miss Zoe Mitchell, be allowed to sit at the defense table to facilitate his responses during proceedings. The prosecutor, a severe man named Davidson, immediately objected. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. Miss Mitchell is not certified legal interpreter. Her presence at the defense table is inappropriate. Miss Mitchell has been my client's primary communication assistant for the past 3 months, Rebecca countered. She's familiar with his communication style, his typing patterns, his needs as a nonverbal individual. The ADA requires reasonable accommodation for defendants with disabilities. Denying Mr. Park access to his preferred communication method violates his constitutional rights. The judge, an older black woman named Harris, looked intrigued. Miss Mitchell, please approach. Zoe stood on shaking legs and approached the bench. Judge Harris studied her with sharp eyes that missed nothing. You understand that facilitating communication for a defendant in a federal RICO case is serious business? That anything you translate could be used as evidence? Yes, Your Honor. I understand. And you're willing to take on that responsibility? I am. Mr. Park deserves the right to defend himself in his own voice, even if that voice comes through my words. Judge Harris's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Well said. I'll allow it on a provisional basis. But Miss Mitchell, you translate exactly what he types. No embellishment, no interpretation. His words only. Understood? Understood, Your Honor. Then take your seat at the defense table. Zoe moved to sit between Minjun and Rebecca, hyper-aware of every eye in the courtroom tracking her movement. Minjun's hand found hers under the table, squeezed once. Gratitude and affection and apology all in that single touch. The arraignment proceeded. The prosecutor read charges that made Zoe's blood run cold. Racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice. Each charge carried years, decades of potential prison time. When Judge Harris asked for Minjun's plea, he typed and Zoe read aloud, "Not guilty, Your Honor, to all charges." The prosecution argued against bail, flight risk, danger to community, extensive criminal enterprise. Rebecca argued for reasonable bail with monitoring, community ties, no prior convictions, willingness to surrender passport. Judge Harris listened to both sides, then rendered her decision. Bail is set at $5 million. Mr. Park will surrender his passport, submit to electronic monitoring, and confine himself to Los Angeles County pending trial. $5 million. Zoe's heart sank, but Jin Woo was already on his phone, making arrangements. Within an hour, bail was posted. Cash, immediate. The kind of money that proved exactly how extensive Minjun's resources were. By early afternoon, he was free, electronic monitor strapped to his ankle, standing outside the courthouse in the clothes Jin Woo had brought. "Take me home," Minjun typed to Zoe. Not Jin Woo, not Rebecca. Zoe. She nodded and they climbed into the waiting car, leaving the circus of media and spectators behind. In the privacy of the vehicle, Minjun pulled Zoe into his arms, held her so tightly she could barely breathe, and shook with silent sobs that broke her heart. "I've got you," Zoe whispered, running her hands through his hair. "I've got you, and we're going to fight this." Minjun pulled back enough to type, "You shouldn't have done that. Shouldn't have made yourself part of this. Now they'll investigate you, threaten you, use you against me. Let them try. I'm not going anywhere." "Zoe, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly. I understand that you're facing 20 years for crimes you may or may not have committed. I understand that you can't defend yourself without help, and I understand that I love you enough to risk whatever comes." Minjun's expression crumpled. He typed, "I don't deserve you." "Probably not, but you've got me anyway." The trial preparation consumed the next 2 months. Zoe learned more about Minjun's operations than she'd ever wanted to know. The gambling, the protection rackets, the smuggling operations disguised as legitimate import businesses. She listened to wiretapped conversations, read financial documents that detailed money laundering schemes, reviewed witness statements from people who'd turned against Minjun to save themselves. "How much of this is true?" she asked one night, surrounded by evidence in Rebecca's conference room. Minjun didn't insult her by lying. Typed most of it. "The gambling operations are real. The protection services exist. The money laundering happened. But the murder conspiracy? I never ordered anyone killed. That's fabrication from a witness trying to reduce his own sentence. Can we prove that? Maybe. If we can discredit the witness, show he's lying to save himself. But Zoe, even if we win on the murder charge, the rest of it is enough to put me away for years. Then we fight every charge. Make them prove every allegation. Force them to meet their burden. You sound like a lawyer. I had a good teacher. She gestured at Rebecca, who smiled slightly. The real problem, Rebecca said, is that Zoe's testimony will be crucial. She'll have to testify about Minjun's communication methods, his competence, his state of mind. The prosecution will try to discredit her, suggest she's biased, imply she's complicit. They'll dig into her background, her relationship with Minjun, everything. My background is clean, Zoe said. I've never been arrested, never been involved in anything illegal, and my relationship with Minjun started after I became his employee, not before. There's nothing for them to find. They'll find something, Rebecca warned. They always do. And Zoe, you need to understand, testifying for Minjun could destroy your life, future employment, relationships, reputation. People will see you as a criminal's accomplice regardless of the verdict. Zoe looked at Minjun, this complicated man who'd entered her life through an asthma attack and turned everything upside down. I don't care, she said quietly. Let them think what they want. I know who he is. I know who I am. That's enough. Minjun typed, I love you. The words appeared on his screen, simple and devastating. I love you, and I'm sorry for dragging you into this nightmare. You didn't drag me anywhere. I walked in with my eyes open. Zoe took his hand. Now let's figure out how to win this thing. The trial began on a gray Monday in March. The courtroom was packed with media, Minjun's associates, federal agents, and curious onlookers eager to see a mafia boss taken down. Zoe sat at the defense table, Minjun on one side, Rebecca on the other, trying to look calm while her heart raced like a trapped bird. The prosecution's opening statement painted Minjun as a ruthless criminal mastermind who'd built an empire on violence and fear. They promised evidence, wiretaps, documents, witness testimony, that would prove beyond doubt his guilt on all charges. Rebecca's opening was different. She acknowledged Minjun's business operations while questioning the prosecution's characterization, emphasizing reasonable doubt, and highlighting the questionable credibility of witnesses motivated by plea deals. Then came the witnesses. One by one, people from Minjun's world took the stand and testified against him. Some were clearly lying. Their stories contradicted evidence, shifted under cross-examination. Others were telling truth that made Zoe's stomach turn. Yes, Minjun ran gambling operations. Yes, he collected protection money. Yes, he laundered cash through his restaurants. But the murder conspiracy remained unproven. The key witness, a former associate named Lee, testified that Minjun had ordered a hit on a rival gang member. Under Rebecca's cross-examination, his story fell apart. Dates didn't match security footage. Recorded conversations he claimed existed couldn't be produced. And when pressed, Lee admitted he was testifying to avoid a 20-year sentence of his own. So you're lying to save yourself, Rebecca stated. Objection, the prosecutor shouted. Sustained, Judge Harris said. Rephrase, Ms. Chen. Mr. Lee, isn't it true that you'd say anything the prosecution wanted to avoid prison? I'm telling the truth. A truth that conveniently emerged only after you were offered a plea deal? Lee shifted uncomfortably. I didn't want to betray Mr. Park, but I had to protect my family. Rebecca pulled out a document. Your plea agreement states your sentence depends on the successful prosecution of Mr. Park. If he's acquitted, you face the full 20 years, correct? Yes. So your freedom literally depends on Mr. Park's conviction. That doesn't mean I'm lying, but the damage was done. The jury's skepticism was visible. When it was the defense's turn, Rebecca called Zoe to the stand. The prosecutor's objection, the witness's biased, romantically involved with the defendant, was noted but overruled. Zoe swore to tell the truth and sat in the witness box, acutely aware of every eye in the courtroom on her. Miss Mitchell, Rebecca began, how did you meet Mr. Park? Zoe told the story, the asthma attack, the inhaler, the rescue, described Minjun's gratitude, the job offer, her role as his communication assistant. She was careful, factual, avoiding emotional language. And during your time as Mr. Park's assistant, did you ever witness him ordering violence? No, never. Did you see evidence of the murder conspiracy alleged by the prosecution? No. I saw a businessman managing restaurants and legitimate operations. I saw someone who couldn't speak defending himself from law enforcement, who didn't understand his disability. I saw a man trying to build community programs while maintaining his father's legacy. The prosecutor's cross-examination was brutal. Miss Mitchell, isn't it true you're romantically involved with the defendant? Yes. So you have personal motivation to lie for him? I have personal motivation to tell the truth. I love him, yes. But I love him for who he actually is, not who I'm pretending him to be. If I'd seen him order someone killed, I'd be testifying for the prosecution. You expect us to believe that? I expect you to examine the evidence. I've never lied under oath. I have no criminal record. I'm a community college graduate who worked as a waitress before Mr. Park hired me. I have nothing to gain from lying and everything to lose. But I'm here because he deserves the truth. And the truth is that I never saw evidence of murder conspiracy. But you admit he runs gambling operations, protection rackets, money laundering schemes. I admit I was aware his business had questionable elements. But awareness isn't participation. I was his communication assistant, not his criminal accomplice. Yet you're defending him now. I'm translating for him. There's a difference. And yes, I'm defending him from charges I don't believe are true. That's not criminal. That's human. The prosecutor tried several more angles, but Zoe held firm. She was honest about what she knew, clear about what she didn't, and unshakable in her conviction that Min-Jun hadn't ordered anyone killed. When she finally stepped down, Min-Jun's eyes were bright with tears he couldn't shed in public. He typed on his phone, showed it to her as she passed. Thank you. For everything. The trial lasted 6 weeks. 6 weeks of testimony, evidence, legal arguments. 6 weeks of Zoe sitting beside Min-Jun, translating his typed responses, watching him fight for his life through words on a screen. 6 weeks of falling deeper in love with a man who might spend the next 20 years in prison. The jury deliberated for 3 days. Zoe spent them in Min-Jun's penthouse, neither of them sleeping much, just holding each other and pretending the world outside didn't exist. If they convict me, Min-Jun typed on the 3rd night, I need you to promise something. Don't. Promise me you'll move on. Build a life. Don't wait for me. I can't promise that. Zoe. No. If they convict you, I'll be here when you get out. I'll visit every chance I get. I'll fight for appeals. I'll wait. Because that's what love means. You don't get to ask me to stop. Min-Jun pulled her close and Zoe felt tears on her neck. His tears, silent and devastating. I don't deserve you, he typed. You keep saying that. I keep staying anyway. The verdict came on a Thursday. Guilty on racketeering charges. Guilty on money laundering. Guilty on conspiracy. Not guilty on murder conspiracy. Lee's testimony too questionable. Evidence too thin. Zoe watched Min-Jun's face as each verdict was read, watched him remain stoic and controlled even as his world collapsed. Sentencing was set for 2 weeks later. Outside the courthouse, media swarmed. Zoe pushed through them, Min-Jun's hand in hers, Jin-Woo clearing a path. They made it to the car, made it back to the penthouse, made it through the door before Min-Jun finally broke. He collapsed on the couch, pulled Zoe down with him, and shook with sobs that had no sound but shook his entire body. We'll appeal, Zoe said fiercely. Rebecca says there are grounds. The wiretap evidence might be inadmissible. The jury instructions were questionable. We're not done fighting, Min-Jun typed. I'm looking at 15 to 20 years. Even with appeals, even with good behavior, I'll be 45 when I get out. You'll be 43. Your whole life wasted waiting for a criminal. My life, my choice. And Min-Jun, you're not a waste. You're the man I love. The man who built community centers while running an empire. The man who bowed to a waitress because she helped him. The man who's fighting to be better than his father's legacy. That's worth waiting for. You're worth waiting for. He kissed her then, desperate and grateful and full of a love that transcended words typed on screens. They made love that night like it might be their last time. slow and fierce and tender all at once. And afterward, lying tangled together, Minjun typed, "Marry me." Zoe's breath caught. "Before sentencing, before they take me away, I want you to be my wife. Want you to have everything I own if the worst happens. Want legal protection for you. But mostly, Zoe, I just want to call you mine in every way that matters." "Yes," Zoe whispered. "Yes, you impossible man. I'll marry you." Tomorrow? Tomorrow. They married in a small ceremony with just Jinwoo, Rebecca, Ivy, who cried through the entire thing despite her reservations, and Caleb, who signed his approval and welcomed Min Jun into their family. Judge Harris, moved by their story, officiated. And when Min Jun slipped a ring onto Zoe's finger, she felt something settle in her chest. Certainty. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. Sentencing came with the weight of finality. Judge Harris acknowledged Min Jun's community contributions, his lack of violence in the proven charges, the questionable testimony that had driven the prosecution. But she also noted the severity of the crimes, the damage to the community, the need for deterrence. 15 years, she pronounced, eligible for parole after 10 with good behavior. 15 years, 10 minimum. Zoe felt the number like a physical blow, but Min Jun squeezed her hand, typed with his free hand. "I love you. Wait for me." Then the marshals were taking him away, and Zoe was left standing in a courtroom watching her husband of 2 weeks disappear into the federal prison system. The first year was the hardest, learning to live alone again, to sleep in a bed that felt too big, to build a life while half her heart was behind bars. But Zoe refused to collapse. She took over Min Jun's community center project, used his resources to build something beautiful, hired teachers and counselors, created programs for immigrant families, job training for ex-convicts, ESL classes for those who needed them. She visited Min Jun every week, watched him adapt to prison life with the same grace he'd shown in the boardroom. He learned ASL in prison, really learned it, not just basics, so they could communicate through glass without phones or typing. Their conversations became a mix of sign language and mouth words, intimate despite the barriers. "The center is thriving," Zoe signed during one visit. "We served 200 families last month, got 15 people placed in jobs, 3 passed their GED. Min Jun's smile was genuine. "You're changing lives. We're changing lives. This is your vision. I'm just executing it." "No, you made it real, made it matter. I'm so proud of you." Years passed. The center expanded. Zoe's reputation grew, not as a mob wife, but as a community leader. She spoke at conferences about accessible education, advocated for communication rights, built partnerships with local governments and nonprofits. And every week she returned to that prison, returned to Min Jun, returned to a love that distance and bars couldn't diminish. In year 8, Min Jun's appeal finally succeeded. New evidence of prosecutorial misconduct, questions about wiretap legality. The racketeering conviction was overturned. Sentence reduced to time served. After 8 years, 3 months, and 17 days, Park Min Jun walked out of federal prison a free man. Zoe was waiting outside the gates just like she'd promised. Older now, 34 to his 36, but her eyes still lit up when she saw him the way they had that night in the rain. Min Jun crossed the distance between them in long strides, pulled her into his arms, and for the first time in 8 years, kissed his wife without glass between them. "I'm home," he signed when they finally broke apart. "You're home," Zoe agreed. "Now what?" "Now we build a life, a real one, legal, honest, together." He cupped her face in his hands. "I'm done with my father's world, done with crime, with violence, with everything that took me away from you. I want to be better, want to earn the love you gave me." "You already have my love. You've always had it. Then let me earn keeping it." And he did. Min Jun threw himself into the community center, into legitimate business, into building the empire his father should have created. He and Zoe became partners in every sense, in business, in life, in a love that had survived impossible odds. 5 years later, standing in the center's new wing dedicated to deaf and hard of hearing services Watching Min Jun sign with a young mute boy about never letting silence define your worth, Zoe thought about that rainy night so long ago, about a dying stranger and an inhaler she'd given without thinking, about a choice that had led to this, a life she'd never imagined but couldn't imagine living without. "What are you thinking?" Min Jun signed, catching her watching him. "That I'd do it all again, every moment, every risk, every scary choice, because they all led here, to you, to us, to this. Even the trial, the years apart, even those, because they taught us what we're made of, what we mean to each other. And Min Jun, we're unbreakable." He pulled her close, signed against her lips. "I love you, Zoe Park." "I love you too," she whispered, and somewhere in the background children laughed and played. Families found resources they needed. Lives were changed by the empire of compassion they'd built from the ashes of a criminal one. A dying stranger and a black waitress with an inhaler, rewriting their story into something beautiful. That night, as they lay tangled in their bed, theirs now, shared and warm, Min Jun typed one last message into his phone, showed it to Zoe in the darkness. "Thank you for stopping that night, for seeing me, for giving me your inhaler and your heart and your faith. You saved my life in every way a person can be saved. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret it." Zoe took the phone, typed back, "You already have. And Min, June, I'd give you that inhaler 1,000 times over, because every time it would lead to this, to us, to love that breathes life into both of us." They fell asleep that way, phones dark between them, hearts beating in sync. Two people who'd found each other across impossible distances and refused to let anything, not crime, not prison, not time itself, tear them apart. And in the morning, they woke together and began another day of building something worth believing in. A love forged in crisis, tempered by separation, and made unbreakable by the simple choice to keep showing up for each other, no matter what the world demanded. A black waitress and a Korean mafia boss, proving that sometimes the most unlikely love stories are the ones that change everything.